Tricia and welcome to my channel. Tonight I'm going to be making some fajitas rancheras. Now I have made bistec ranchero in the past, which is very similar to this. So I'm basically going to be repeating a recipe but with a different style of beef, if you will. Now the beef that I'm going to be using is going to be some chuck beef that is used for fajitas. And I'm going to be slicing those up in little strips. I'm going to use 4 medium tomatoes, or you can use Roma tomatoes. If you don't find regular round ones, it's okay. Use Roma tomatoes. I'm going to use about 1/2 to 3/4 of an onion. I've got 2 limes here. I'm going to use some olive oil to cook this all in, and then I'm going to be using a can of tomato sauce as well. And I've got my salt, pepper, garlic powder, and cumin powder as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up these little vegetables and get them ready, and then I'm also going to chop up the beef. This is all for my honey because Father's Day is coming up, and I don't want to forget that this Sunday, so happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there and to the moms who have to be dads. So here we go. Let's get to cooking. Alright, so I've started chopping up my onions in sort of a half moon. You can chop them up fine if you want. I'm just going to basically slice them. Alright, so now I'm just chopping up my tomatoes, and I'm going to basically cut them up the same way. You don't have to chop them up into little pieces, but if that's how you prefer it, go right ahead. If you have a can of chopped tomatoes, that would be good. Nice large can, like a 20 ounce or so. That would be nice to add into this because it's already got the the little tomato juice, so then you wouldn't have to be using the tomato sauce like I'm going to be using. But if you don't have tomato sauce and you happen to have some chicken broth, that's fine, or just use some water in your recipe. Alright, so I'm already cutting up my 3rd tomato, and I'm kind of thinking that this is good enough because they were kind of big, and this is just for my husband and I, but I do want a lot of tomato sauce, or a lot of tomato in there. And I've sliced it, then I've gone ahead and I just roughly chopped it into some bits here, so they're not very big, as you can see, but they're not small either. Okay, so this is all ready. Now I'm going to cut up my beef fajitas. Alright, so I'm done cutting up all my beef. I've cut up the little white fatty bits that are on the meat. They're like a skin or something, I don't know what it is, but you just want to remove that part off of the meat. That'll also help it be a little more tender. Alright, so I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'm going to get this going so we can put our meat in there. Alright, I've got my pan nice and hot, and I've had it on high to get it all nice and hot. And I'm going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil in there, only because of the amount of meat that I'm cooking. And we're not going to obviously eat all of this meat in one night. It's just my husband and I, like I said before. But I'm going to save some of this for tomorrow because it'll be great for our lunch. So I'm just going to put this into our pan. There we go. Okay, I'm just spreading it out at the bottom of the pan, or skillet, whatever you decide to use. And I'm going to season it. About 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It's really all I want to add in there, like that. I'm going to put lots of pepper, cracked pepper. I'm using black pepper. You can use white pepper. Multicolored peppercorns if you wish. Okay, let me move this up a little closer. There we go. I'm going to put some powdered cumin or ground cumin, and I like a lot of cumin, so I like that flavor. And you could skip it if you don't, but really and truly you're not going to get that authentic kind of flavor, like Tex-Mex flavor or Hispanic flavor, whatever you want to call it, if you're not using cumin. So you really want to try that. And lots of garlic powder because I love the taste of garlic. And this is perfect for this particular recipe. Alright, so we're just going to stir that around. And we're going to let them cook a bit, let them get nice and brown. Take about 8 or 10 minutes to let them get all sizzled up in here, and then we'll add our onions and tomato and our sauce. All right, so I've been letting this cook for about 10 to 10 minutes here, and this is what my beef is looking like. Let me get some of this out here so that you can look at it close up right here. There you go. And it is looking really good, and it smells really good too. Okay, so now we're gonna put our onions in there. So all of my onions, just gonna break them up a little bit. Put them in there. Break them up out here in my bowl before I put them in there. Okay. Now, like I said, you could chop these up, put them in there if you prefer smaller pieces. I like these longer slices, so that's why I'm doing it this way. All right, so now we're just gonna season that a little bit with some pepper. A little bit of garlic. Probably going to be using a lot of seasoning, so here we go. A little bit more of this cumin. All right, let's stir this around. And I still have this on high, by the way, but it has liquid in there from the beef, so it's doing just fine. But you could put it at a medium to high heat on your stove. Watch some YouTube videos while you're doing this. Mine. Okay, so now we're gonna add the tomatoes. I'm gonna let this saute a little bit more. I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes. I'll be back and I'll put in the tomatoes. All right, so I went ahead and I let this saute a little bit. My onions in there so they can get nice and soft. So that is what has happened. Let me show you that. Right there. Okay. Now I'm just going to add my tomatoes that I've chopped up. Get my limes out of the way here. Right. Now this is where you can decide to add a little bit of salt because that'll help the tomatoes sweat and release a lot of the juices in them. So I'll go ahead and just do that just a tiny little bit. About a 1/4 teaspoon of salt or less, just on the tomatoes. There we go. Stir those in real good. Now at this point you could also add some chopped jalapenos or some chopped serrano peppers. That would be really nice if you like your food hot and spicy. If you don't, leave them out. Okay, so now I'm going to squeeze the juice of 2 limes. These limes are, I forgot where they're from. Anyway, they're not Mexican limes. They're Persian limes, that's what they are. Nice big juicy. There we go, and I'm adding the juice of 2 limes. I want lots of juice in there. If you don't have fresh limes, but you can get a little bottle of already squeezed, 100% lime juice or lemon if you want, go right ahead and use that. The citrus will also help tenderize everything. Okay, so now what I want is for that tomato to cook down and get soft. So I'm going to go ahead and give it another 3 or 4 minutes. So altogether, including the time that from the first point where I put the meat in there, and you saw it took maybe 3 minutes or so for that, and then I told you I went another 8-9 minutes. I think it was like 9 minutes. So that was 12, and then I did another 2 minutes for the onions. That's 15. Another 4 minutes or so for these tomatoes to get soft. That'll be 19 minutes. I'm going to add some tomato sauce and a couple of other things, and I'm probably going to give it another 5 or 6 minutes. So altogether, it's probably going to take about 25, maybe even 30 minutes to make this dish. Of course, that doesn't count your preparation time. That's up to you, how fast you can chop up things. All right, so that's just the time that it's taking. I'm gonna go ahead and cover it. Like I said, I'll be back in about 3 minutes or so. All right, so the tomatoes have been cooking there for about 4 minutes, and they've gotten nice and soft, and I can just kind of push them down a little bit with my little wooden spoon here. My spurtle, by the way, these are called a spurtle. We got these from QVC. All right, now we're gonna add some tomato sauce into this. And this rendered a lot of liquid in there, not only from the meat, but from the tomatoes and the onions. And of course, because I had this covered with a lid, it was doing a lot of steaming, and so then it was coming back down as liquid back into our pot every time I had it covered. Okay, got a little bit on myself. I think I got some on my blouse. Okay, look at that. This doesn't take very long. This is already ready here. If this didn't have enough liquid in there, if I felt like it was too dry, then I would add some water. So I had some water here ready. You could use some chicken broth or some beef broth if you want, but I obviously didn't need it because it is nice and juicy. And I'm gonna go ahead and pick this up so that you can see it a little closer. And that is what it's looking like. And this is ready to serve. Now this, I would serve it a nice flour tortilla, or a nice, a soft flour tortilla, or some soft corn tortillas. I prefer corn tortillas, so that's probably what I would serve it with. You could either serve it on a plate, maybe some of that rice that I made last week on the side, and some beans. And then you could just eat it with a fork and your tortillas, or you could make tacos out of this. I'm gonna make nachos out of this actually. Now another thing you could actually do to make this more of a hearty meal, these right here are your finished fajitas rancheras, okay? But I'm gonna add a little bit extra because I'm gonna do something else with these. All right, so I've got my fajitas rancheras, but I'm gonna add something extra. As I said, I've got here a can of corn, and I've already gone ahead and I've drained all the liquid from that can of corn. So I'm gonna add that whole thing in there. I've also got some black beans, and these black beans are actually beans with lime and jalapeno, so I'm gonna add that in. So there's my spiciness that I like to have in my meal, so I'm adding that in, the whole thing, making sure all the little jalapenos that were in there went into my pot. And now I can mix this up, and it's basically like a stew almost, a fajita stew. And I want to show you that close up. Look at that. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to serve this up, and we're going to try this. All right, so I've got my fajitas rancheras that I've actually added some corn and some black beans to, and I'm just going to serve this up in a nice little bowl. You can serve it up in a plate with some rice on the side, since we've already got our beans and corn in there, or you can just serve it as is, maybe with some chips, flour tortilla, or some corn tortillas. And take a look at that. That looks absolutely delicious. But I'm going to serve mine up in a different way. I'm actually going to make myself some nachos. So I've got my bed of chips here, and now I'm just going to put some of this yummy fajitas all over, and those onions and the tomato, and of course the beans and the corn. Now you could have just added the corn and the beans, you know, warm them up separately, but since we're putting it all in one plate, why not warm it up all together? I want to make sure I get some of them jalapenos on my plate actually. Okay, so I also want to put some cheese on top. I'm going to stick it in the microwave, and I'll be back. All right, I've got my nachos here on my plate. Take a look at that. That looks delicious. Let's go ahead and give it a taste. I want to get a chip that has some cheese and beans and all that. That's a big piece right there. Let's get some of this beef on there. Look at that. There we go, everyone. My fajitas rancheras, served up with some corn and some black beans and some nachos, or served up in a bowl. You could add some rice on the side, as I said, some tortillas, or just eat it up out of the bowl, just like this. It is so good. It is a hearty meal and something you can serve up to your family, and they will appreciate it very, very much. So give me a big old thumbs up. I'm gonna give myself a big old thumbs up. Thank you all very much. For those of you who have already subscribed. And I want to just ask the rest of you, if you're watching this, please subscribe and share on your social medias. And as always, enjoy.